people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. ABC head justifies Florida's decision to allow return of Conor Benn. Questions the transparency of the BBBOC. The head of the Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports, ABC, says the Florida Athletic Commission could not find sufficient reason to deny the ring return of drug offender Conor Benn.
Because of what we talked about. The provisional suspension issued out by the BBBOC was lifted by the NADP.
Nobody wanted to believe Conor Benn or Eddie Hearn when they said that, but here you have it. He's fighting this weekend. If he weren't cleared, he wouldn't be fighting.
There are many who have been trying to turn this into a semantics argument. They don't necessarily mean that he's cleared to fight. Did he clear his name?
Has anyone ever cleared their name in this situation?
What exactly are you asking this guy to do? It's been 18 months.
Benn's place on the Orlando fight card this weekend was apparently secured once he was able to produce a negative test for banned substances to the Florida Athletic Commission. The test was administered by VADA according to a source with knowledge of the proceedings, but the negative test does not take away or absolve the fact that Benn failed 2 drug tests last year. Furthermore, has never produced a credible explanation for how clomiphene entered his body.
Well, he gave an explanation. How credible it is, I'll leave such judgments up to you, but he cited human error in the lab.
It's what he said in that lengthy public statement he made at the height of this anti-doping fiasco.
He said that the tests from UCAD and the tests from VADA were taken at or around the same time, and the UCAD tests came back clear, but the VADA tests didn't.
The article continues, he has never produced a credible explanation for how clomiphene entered his body, to say nothing of his hostile and generally uncooperative attitude towards the investigative procedure of the British Boxing Board of Control, the body that governs prize fighting in the UK. The WBC in their own probe last year proposed that Benn had accidentally consumed contaminated eggs, but Benn rejected that line of reasoning. In March, Benn was placed under provisional suspension by UCAD, but Benn and his legal team fought that verdict, reportedly on a technicality, and a few months later in July, the National Anti-Doping Panel lifted Benn's suspension, paving the way for Benn to pursue fights in foreign jurisdictions.
UCAD has appealed that decision.
Asked to respond to these concerns, Michael Mazzulli, the head of the ABC, a nonprofit that offers oversight of boxing commissions in the United States, told BoxingScene.com in an interview that the organization no longer had any grounds to advise against Benn's return to boxing. The ABC lifted its own suspension of Benn after he returned a negative test to the FAC, the Florida Athletic Commission. The ABC initially suspended Mr. Benn because of his positive drug test, Mazzulli said. He has since provided the State Athletic Commission in Florida a negative test related to the drug in question, clomiphene. It is Florida's ability to allow or not allow Mr. Benn to fight on September 23rd in Orlando. After that negative test came to light, the board of directors of the ABC decided to revoke Mr. Benn's suspension. Mazzulli pointed out that the ABC does not adjudicate, but simply provides recommendations. The ABC does not have the ability to prevent Benn from fighting after producing a negative test, Mazzulli said.
Seems like a lot of people are in their tits that Conor Benn's going to be fighting this weekend. Most of them just so happen to be big Eddie Hearn and Matchroom critics.
Critics like Mark Ortega of what is now the defunct PBC on Fox.
He's been clutching at his pearls all weekend over this thing.
Was he clutching at his pearls when the people at Showtime decided to give Luis Ortiz a platform to fight on? A 2-time drug cheat.
Oh, that was different.
Now, in a separate interview held last week, Michael Mazzulli indicated that the Florida Athletic Commission would only approve Benn's appearance on the Orlando show if Benn took a drug test that returned a negative result and the BBBOC gave their consent. But The BBBOC never offered their approval per se. Moreover, on Wednesday, Robert Smith, the General Secretary of the BBBOC, voiced his opposition to Benn's ring return in an interview with TalkSport.
Imagine that.
Talking down a matchroom fighter on TalkSport. I never would have thought.
You can express your opposition till the cows come home, but approval, actual approval, is not Robert Smith's to give or take away, because the provisional suspension,
The NADP already lifted that, and that's the part that so many people are overlooking.
he's not suspended. He's free to fight.
Cleared to fight.
You don't like it? Go fly a kite.
The Florida Athletic Commission's decision to allow Benn to fight in their territory would seem to be in strident opposition to this principle of reciprocity. When asked to respond to these discrepancies, Mazzulli expressed his frustration with the BBBOC, saying he had never so much as received a phone call from Robert Smith.
Mazzulli then shared a letter that Timothy Shipman,
The executive director of combat sports at the Florida Athletic Commission, received from Smith in response to Shipman's query about any possible objections the BBBOC might have towards Benn's inclusion on the Orlando show. Mazzulli described the letter as indecisive and pointed to a few selections. I am only able to provide you with limited factual information, unfortunately, as to ongoing matters, Smith wrote. I would urge you to consider carefully any application and do not seek to fetter your decision-making process, Smith wrote later. Mazzulli said the absence of firm opposition from Smith to Benn's appearance on the 923 card left Shipman with no other credible alternative but to allow Benn to fight.
You know why?
Robert can't make the recommendation that they not allow Benn to fight because Benn's not suspended. He's not suspended anywhere. He's not suspended in the UK, and he's not suspended here.
Doesn't that mean he's clear?
That's exactly what it means, and you don't have to like it.
So who fucking cares if you don't?
The BBBOC has not provided enough information to the ABC for the organization to leave Benn on suspension, Mazzulli said. The ABC has had no contact with the British board. The ABC works hand in hand with the BBBOC, Mazzulli maintained, but there is nothing the ABC can presently do to deny Benn the ability to earn income from fighting. A test was formed, which returned a negative result.
What more do they want?
It's been 18 months since Conor Benn's last fight, and approximately a year since all of this started.
What do you want? You want this guy should never box again?
Could be the reason the BBBOC has been so persistent is they want to justify their existence. They know that they have no precedent to suspend Conor Benn because he didn't fail a UCAD test, and you work in tandem with UCAD.
Not VADA.
Even if he did have an adverse finding in his VADA samples, you don't work in tandem with them, and you have no oversight as to what goes on in their labs or any of that.
You don't.
So long as his UCAD tests came back clear, and they did, as far as you're concerned, he is clear.
He should be.
And he is. He's not suspended in the United Kingdom in spite of Robert Smith's expressed opposition.
File your appeal. See if that gets you somewhere.
Though if it doesn't, you cannot deny him a license in the future without facing legal repercussions. Men's heavyweight news ahead of his upcoming heavyweight WBA Intercontinental fight with Murat Gassiev. Otto Valine believes he has the power to hurt and stop Murat Gassiev, set to go down next week on Saturday. That's going to be a busy day in the sport.
There's a boxer show, a matchroom show, the Canelo versus Charlo fight later on that day in this part of the world.
In this fight, up until this point, Gassiev has shown the sort of chin that some can only dream of. When his defense fails him and his opponents land huge blows right on the money, Gassiev doesn't flinch. Ultimately, Valine isn't worried about Gassiev's ability to take a good shot, although he shared the ring with a few heavy hitters. Valine is convinced that he can put his man to sleep if given the chance. I think I can do it, said Valine to BoxingScene.com when asked if he has the power to stop Gassiev dead in his tracks.
Because Murat Gassiev is the shorter, stumpier fighter of the two, I don't expect that Otto Valine will take the offensive approach that he took on with Tyson Fury, one of the biggest heavyweights at the weight.
Big guy. With Tyson Fury, you saw Otto Valine stepping into his punches and taking it to him. But with Murat Gassiev, because he's shorter, stumpier, I think he's going to fight off the back foot. I think he's going to try to set him up.
Catch him with a hard counter.
Highlight reel-worthy knockouts. Get the fans buzzing, but winning keeps them coming back. Of course, having Gassiev lying down motionless on the canvas would prove to the world that he's more than just a pure boxer. With that said, as long as Valine's hand is raised in victory, he'll be a happy man. The most important thing is getting the win, but it would be amazing if I could stop him. It would be a really big statement.
Murat Gassiev is a mid-range to inside fighter, pressure fighter, needs to get close to you before he can do anything.
That's why I don't expect Otto Valine to take the offensive with this particular fighter for this particular fight. Otto Valine, who sports a professional record of 25 wins with 1 loss, no draws,
14 knockouts, a southpaw.
to Murat Gassiev, who sports a professional record of 30 wins with 1 loss, no draws,
23 knockouts. More knockouts than Otto Valine, though most of them were in the cruiserweight division, not the heavyweight division. And Murat, he's an orthodox fighter.
close quarters fighter, whereas Otto Valine, out of these two, he's the more long and limber guy. And I expect him to use it. I mean, I don't expect him to give up his height to this guy, give up his reach.
It's counterintuitive.
He'd be doing half the work for him. The last couple of years, Murat Gassiev hasn't really been that active. He only fought once in 2020, only once in 2021, only once last year.
But he has already seen action this year, back in March.
Got himself a second-round knockout over then unbeaten Mike Balogun. And Otto hasn't been asleep at the wheel. Otto's been fighting. He fought 2 times last year, and he already saw action in January of this year. Scored a unanimous decision over the pedestrian Halaman Olguin.
So neither guy has any ring rust to shake off. They've both fought in the last 12 months, and this is a WBA Intercontinental title fight. A step in the direction of perhaps the WBA regular title.
And that version of the WBA title is going to be on the line in the upcoming Manuel Charr versus Jarrell Miller fight. As a result of some lawsuit that Manuel Charr had with the WBA, that's how they chose to settle those affairs. They gave him that title.
Now that he's got the belt, he's under orders, he's got to defend it against Jarrell. I think he's going to lose.
And I think the winner of this fight could see themselves fighting the winner of that fight.
The winner of Valine versus Gassiev may face the winner of Charr versus Miller.
So that they can go on to become the mandatory challenger to whoever the WBA champion is at the time.
The full champion.
Right now it's Usyk, but as we all know, boxing is the theater of the unexpected, and that could change.
As it pertains to Valine versus Gassiev, even though Murat Gassiev is the smaller fighter who moved up in weight, I feel like he's the bigger puncher.
And I feel like Otto is going to respect that. He's going to fight off his back foot. He's going to move lateral. He's going to try to counter him because he knows he's a close quarters fighter, a phone booth fighter.
Marching forward in that high guard looking a Crowder guy.
He ain't got long arms, so he's got to get close to you to get those punches off.
Otto will likely try to set him up. Can he do it? Can he knock him out?
When you're talking about guys this big that weigh this much, you really can't rule out the possibility of a knockout, though I do tend to lean a little bit more towards Gassiev's pressure than Otto's boxing.
Yeah, Otto's going to try to move lateral, set him up, all that jazz, but
I feel like the aesthetic of this fight is going to be similar to that of the Michael Valish fight 2 fights ago. Another moving target that Gassiev dispatched.
things to think about. We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
Finally, downstairs in welterweight and super middleweight news, Terrence Crawford's team member fires back at Canelo, saying the only great fighter that Canelo beat was Triple G.
You might have heard people talking about this earlier this week.
Canelo believes that Crawford's recent win is getting to his head a bit. When last seen, Errol Spence Jr. was on the wrong end of a lopsided beating. Shortly after, Alvarez gave Crawford all the credit in the world. With that said, the megastar took a long look at Crawford's resume. After doing so, Alvarez came to the conclusion that Spence was the only notable name that Crawford shared the ring with. Several members of Team Crawford were perturbed by his comments, none more than Bernie Davis, Bernie the boxer. Crawford's good friend and hype man took the time to dissect Alvarez's resume as well. Once he finished analyzing what he saw, Davis is now of the belief that Alvarez hasn't fought a murderer's row.
Everyone's entitled to their opinions. Bernie's entitled to his, you're entitled to yours, and I'm entitled to mine.
Even if you don't think of Canelo's quality of competition so far as a murderer's row, it's still better than 99.9% of what's out there.
Consider that neither the Charlo brothers or Demetrius Andrade fought the version of Lara that Canelo fought, a high-risk, low-reward opponent, a Cuban southpaw, a pure boxer.
Unbeaten Austin Trout after his signature win over Miguel Cotto many years ago.
Nitpicking Canelo's resume really isn't the way to go.
The only good or great fighter that he beat was Gennady Golovkin, said Bernie the Boxer on The Boxing Voice. Alvarez, of course, shared the ring with Golovkin on 3 separate occasions.
Now, Bernie was only responding to Canelo's comments on Crawford that the only notable fighter that he beat was Spence. Bernie didn't like that.
In that way, Canelo started it, and Bernie was just adding to that conversation. In the end, Davis is hoping that his good friend is given that opportunity. Although beating Alvarez is a difficult task, Davis has no doubt that Crawford can get it done. I think it's a hell of a fight. I think we can outbox that guy.
I think currently Canelo has a better resume than Terrence.
He doesn't exhibit the same dominance that Terrence exhibits in his fights. He doesn't, but that could be because he's fighting better fighters than Terrence is fighting. You have to consider that Miguel Cotto is a cut above anyone you'll find on Terrence's resume, Errol Spence Jr. included.
Multi-weight, multiple-time champion, Hall of Famer. He's literally a Hall of Famer.
Whereas Errol, I'm not sure that he makes it into the Hall. I'm really not based on what he's done so far. I'm not even sure that he can win a title again.
I don't think Gennady Golovkin is the only great fighter that Canelo fought.
I don't. I think Cotto was a great fighter. I think there's a long list of very good fighters in there. Unbeaten Caleb Plant, unbeaten Billy Joe Saunders, unbeaten Callum Smith,
Unbeaten Liam Smith,
unbeaten Austin Trout, Daniel Jacobs,
a high-risk, low-reward opponent in Erislandy Lara. I mean, I think that
Crawford has exhibited more dominant performances than Canelo, but Canelo has fought better fighters than Crawford has.
So maybe that's why he doesn't look as dominant.
Enough of the hair splitting. Terrence Crawford has made it clear that his new career goal is to become a 3-weight undisputed world champion and then retire from boxing. And that's what I like about all this, that Team Crawford aren't just sitting on the sidelines hurling insults and critiques at Canelo. They're talking about him because they want to fight him.
And I like that.
Cross-comparing resumes, what better way to prove that you're the better fighter than to take the other guy on?
I'm a fan of both. I'm a big fan of Terrence Crawford. I'm a big fan of Canelo Alvarez. I'm a big fan of this fight.
And unlike some others, I think Terrence Crawford stands a fighting chance against Canelo Alvarez.
He does.
Call me crazy.
Terrence winning that fight ain't the craziest thing I ever heard.
So as far as this conversation, it's not one that you can really turn around on Canelo Alvarez, because near as I can tell, nobody's quality of competition stacks up with his here today.
That's why he has career blemishes. That's why he looks less than spectacular sometimes, because his quality of competition is consistently better than everyone else's.
And it has been for a long time now. The undisputed run that he went on that only took 11 months. Who's been on a schedule like that in recent memory besides him?
It's not an argument that can be turned around on him.
And I know that he's the one that started it. He did when he claimed that the only great fighter that Terrence beat was Errol Spence Jr.
I don't expect Terrence or his team to take a comment like that lying down. I don't.
But if we are going to cross-compare resumes to say which one is better and which guy has been fighting better guys, it really is Canelo.
Now, if Crawford beats Canelo,
that will put the debate to rest.